Good morning, Abuja. You are locked into your number one independent radio station, Ray Power 100.5 FM. Still the ultimate morning show. Welcome back. And it's time for us to take a look at what the dailies are saying. Tricks and nice forth right here in the studio. All right, now, so starting off with the front page of the Daily Monitor, we have Kogi school attack. FG has failed to protect Nigerian children. That's coming from Atiku Abubakar. Says children of Nigeria deserve books instead of bullets, classrooms instead of captivity, hope instead of horror. Urges FG to strengthen security at schools and examination centers nationwide. Starts on the front page, continues on page 2. Tinubu, our reforms have stabilized the economy, positioned Nigeria for growth, global competitiveness, seeks stronger partnership to boost investments, youth training, job creation. Starts on the front page and continues on page 3. Court orders final forfeiture of 48 properties linked to Malami on page 4. Xenophobia, FG evacuates 1,490 Nigerians from South Africa, page 4. Senate approves 50 million naira to families of teachers, soldiers killed in Orire abduction, page 5. Nigeria's inflation rate drops to 15.91% in June from the NBS on page 2. And lastly, FAC, FG states LG share 2.550 trillion naira for June. That is on page 2 of the Daily Monitor.
All right, and moving on to Daily Trust, we have marketers demand revival of refineries amidst Dangote's dollar sales. That's on page 7. Herbalist asked me to kill family of 7, says suspect. Stories on page 5. Federal government launches online birth and death registration system. Stories on page 3. Malami loses 48 properties to federal government. NECO candidate, official, principal abducted in Kogi State. Stories on page 4. Federal government concludes evacuation of Nigerians from South Africa. Stories on page 12. And finally, 20-year-old commits suicide over alleged rape. Stories on page 14, and that's it on Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, now to the Standard Times, we have FG states LGC's share 2.550 trillion naira 2026, June 2026 revenue. That starts on the front page, continues on page 3. We also have NPA rolls out phased truck entry system to end Apapa gridlock. Starts on the front page, continues on page 3. FG unveils $500 million Niger Delta Agric Investment Fund, page 2. ADC demands independent probe of physiotherapy's death at Umahi's residence, page 2. First Securities Brokers launches First Invest app, empowering Nigerians to trade in the stock market with ease, page 3. Stakeholders back NCC's propose zero-rated access to educational platforms, page 2. State police funding must be first line charge. That's coming from Bamidele on page 4. Inflation rate drops to 15.91% in June, page 3. Customs, police deepening strategic partnership on security communication, public engagement, page 4. Above the nameplate of the Standard Times, we have court orders final forfeiture of 48 properties linked to ex-AGF Malami. Starts on the front page, continues on page 4. INEC, NIMC unveiled digital identity partnership to clean the voter register ahead of 2027 polls, page 3. We also have NDLEA secures 7-year jail term for man who advertised cannabis online, page 2. And that one is a very huge warning, because I see a lot of posts like that on X and the likes, and I begin to wonder, and I'm like, in a country where it's banned, it's against the rules. Come on. All right, so that's the front page of the Standard Times.
All right, moving on to the Vanguard newspaper. Topping the headlines is gunmen raid Kogi school, abduct principal, NECO official, and students. Stories on page 5. Federal government concludes South Africa evacuation, brings home 1,490 Nigerians. Stories on page 8. Alleged money laundering. Court orders final forfeiture of Malami's 48 properties. Stories on page 7. Nigerian priest in US commits suicide after order to return home. Stories on page 6. And finally, 93% of inmates, state offenders, don't need to be in jail, says Tunji Ojo. And that's about it on Vanguard newspaper.
Well, now to the Daily Independent. Manufacturers face credit squeeze amid 1 trillion naira fund delays. Starts on the front page, and that continues on page 4 of the Daily Independent. States police funding to be first line charge. Bamidele on page 6. Kogi deploys security operatives to rescue abducted principal. NECO officials, students, page 7. Economic reforms have stabilized Nigeria. Tinubu takes Nigeria's economic agenda to UN stage in September. That starts on the front page of the Daily Independent. We also have free TV to deliver 100 channels to 40 million households from the NBC on page 27. FG raises committee to speed up power sector decentralization. That's on the front page of the Daily Independent as well. We also have NCAA grounds aircraft bans pilots after Asaba scare, and that's the front page of the Daily Independent.
Now to The Guardian. Headline inflation stagnates at 15.9% as rising energy prices trigger fresh concern. Stories on page 3. National Assembly proposes fiscal autonomy for state police. Stories on page 4. Senate gives NNPCL auditors 1 week to explain 210 trillion naira unreconciled figures. Stories on page 8. Again, Tinubu defends administration's economic reforms. Stories on page 8. Court orders final forfeiture of 40 properties linked to Malami. Stories on page 4. And finally, Senate rejects PFIPC probe as Atiku slams federal government over 6.44 billion naira World Cup budget. That's it on The Guardian newspaper.
All right, now to the Daily Global. FAC FG states LCC's share massive 2.550 trillion naira as June revenue. We also have Dangote Refinery shields Nigerians from global fuel price shock. S&P there. Police burst car theft syndicate, arrests 2 suspects, recovers 2 stolen vehicles in Bauchi. We also have discharge your duties without fear of favor. President Tinubu charges judiciary. So that we also have the World Cup here. Argentina completes stunning comeback to beat England 2-1, qualify for final. Arrest of suspects, recovery of firearms, suspected Indian hemp, and hunt for fleeing accomplice. That's also on the front page of the Daily Global. That's the Daily Global.
All right, on New National Star, top in the headline is Kwankwaso calls for North-South-East reconciliation. Stories on page 2. NPC launches nationwide digital birth and death registration. Tinubu backs together engineering regulation to protect lives. Stories on page 12. Why I spend 400 million naira monthly, says Davido. Stories on page 17. Nigeria has resources, lacks leadership to unlock prosperity, says Obi. Stories on page 10. Gunmen abduct principal, a NECO student in Kogi State. Stories on page 3. And finally, federal government fixes December 2028 as digital switchover deadline. That's it on New National Star.
To the Leadership newspaper, Speaker, Senate leader outline ways to make state police effective. Page 4. FG has evacuated 1,490 Nigerians from South Africa. That's coming from Ministry on page 7. Also have rabies outbreak, claims 2 lives in FCT. Government begins vaccination drive. Page 17. Security agencies intensify efforts to rescue abducted Kogi principal. NECO official students. Page 15. Former Conduct Tribunal chairman gets 100 million naira bail. That is on page 6. Shetima launches $500 million Niger Delta Agricultural Fund to boost food security. Starts on the front page, continues on page 7. That's the front page of the Leadership newspaper.
Now to Al Jazeera, Nigeria. We have Kogi mobilizes massive security operation to rescue abducted NECO officials and students. Fresh killings. Senate urges security deployment to Benue communities. Mandates IGP to probe killings. And finally, federal government targets 530 trillion GDP reserves. Stories on page 2. And that's it on Al Jazeera, Nigeria.
All right, now, so we looked at the Daily Monitor, Standard Times, Daily Independent, Daily Global, and the Leadership newspaper.
Well, we also looked at Daily Trust, Vanguard, The Guardian, Neo National Star, and Al Jazeera, Nigeria.
All right, so starting off with the kidnapping issue in Kogi State, the school attack. That's another sad one. A principal, staff of NECO as well, involved in that one. A very terrible one. And this, attack on our educational, system continues once again. So it's a very sad one. I think students as well, were also involved in that abduction. So very sad one indeed. But just coming off the back of the Orire one, which on the papers, the Senate has approved 50 million naira for them, for those who are affected and all of that. So we're just coming off the back of that one. And now we're into another one. What's the plan in securing, our schools when we know, or now that we know that, these attacks are going to be happening on our schools, to avoid such situation? How do we change the security outlook in this state, in our states, to make sure that schools are better protected? Should be the big question that we should be asking ourselves and finding, answers to this morning and going forward as well.
But then again, kudos to Kogi government for mobilizing massive security operations. So I just hope that they are able to curb the whole insecurity going on in Kogi, and it's also a very sad one. And also to Benue State, Benue communities, Operation Security agencies have been sent over there. So let's just hope for the better.
Yeah, we just hope for the better, and hopefully those, who were abducted in Kogi State get released very soon. And,
So we've been seeing so many suicide cases this morning.
Well, yes, I think there was one you took, and I saw the story before coming to the studio this morning.
About the
20-year-old girl. And it just breaks my heart, first and foremost, that sad. She had to
take her own life,
suicide for us to actually even, take that story seriously. In a society, in our society, we usually, I would say it's not everybody, but a lot of people usually demonize the victim, when it comes to rape.
Even before getting to hear the whole side of the story.
The first question you are asked is, what did you wear? Did you incite the person? Did you... Okay, for example, if maybe somebody turns, a man's advances, down, they're like, oh, how did you turn him down? Were you, rude? Were you heartless?
For the fact that she had to travel from Delta to Abuja.
Yeah, and then in the video, talking about how she made a mistake, trusting and all of that. But the question is, when somebody has, this kind of problem, this issue, rape, it's not on the person who was raped, it's obviously on the rapist. So I think sometimes the kind of response we give as a people, different people give, it usually shifts the blame to the victim. And then we have that kind of environment for people to actually come out in the open, when they are involved in such issues, to be comfortable enough, to tell their stories? And do they feel that, they're going to get that needed help immediately, when something happens to them?
And then I saw that she spoke to an activist, and he said the rapist was not going to get any. There's nothing that can be done about
it. These are the problems, that we're
he would
facing.
go scot-free. So I think that whole thing added to her whole decision of taking her life. Well, then again, it's not supposed to be so. But
but he's been arrested. In one of the videos as well, I saw him begging.
Begging
like,
for what? What are you begging for?
So, we need very severe,
forgiveness.
Punishment on him and to every other person, out there, because you shouldn't be doing that. I mean, in any way, shouldn't be done. In a society, in a modern society, in a civilized, society, we shouldn't be having, men, doing that, or even, women doing that. Anybody,
I saw
raping
another
anyone.
story where a 75-year-old man raped an 11-year-old girl, and 75. He's almost 80 years old, and you're defiling an 11-year-old girl. Well.
Very sad one indeed. I must say, very, very sad one. And that person has to be punished. Fully.
Was given 10 years, 10 years
well.
imprisonment, just 10 years, and a fine of 1 million naira to the family for compensation.
What does 1 million naira do at this point in time? Well, 10 years. Hopefully, he's going to see it out. There's not going to be.
Hopefully, he doesn't die before.
Or he's coming out based on good behavior or whatever. Serve out the 10 years as well. Well, this morning as well, on the front pages, the FG has evacuated over 1,490 Nigerians from South Africa, and good figures, I must say, for those who want to return back to the country, and trying to also, hopefully they can get to reintegrate themselves as soon as possible and move on with their lives. It's not an easy thing to leave behind.
Everything that you've worked hard for.
In another country. Probably there are some of them who also probably haven't experienced Nigeria in a long time, probably the kids of these, families and all of that. So having to start all over again is a very tough one indeed. But, hopefully they can be able to do that and move on from all of those, problems and put them behind as well. This morning also, the Senate is, outlining ways to make state police effective. So that story is on the Leadership newspaper. And that's one thing we'll keep hammering on, making sure there are checks, there are balances to make sure that, we have the best when it comes to the state police, from the recruitment, the personnel, they have to be of good character, good standing, educated as well to an extent, understand do's and don'ts, how to relate to people in the public and all of that. Also train them in proper policing way and all of that. So it's very, very important. And also the pay as well for these officers. Will it be a general, pay? Will it be based on what a state can pay? So all of these questions, all of this, still being discussed and finalized, and I'm sure we'll get the best approach to the state police very, very soon.
And then also Senate rejecting this whole PFIPC probe. Reject what is there to reject? Like they're rejecting the whole probe, and Atiku is slamming the federal government. I mean, I think Atiku has always been out there doing his thing, same as Peter Obi, always trying to stand for what they believe is the truth. And I think I'm going to have to agree with Atiku on this one. Senate rejecting the whole PFIPC probe thing is not okay to me.
Well, it shouldn't be, anyway. I think there should be a probe for it. There should be an investigation
Definitely
into all of these things. Well, unless, them rejecting it through the Senate is them just saying, okay, let those, not necessarily let the man go, let the likes of the ICPC or whatever, the police and co do their own job. Let's just put our hands away from things, if that's what the probe, rejecting the probe, means from the Senate. I understand, that one, but definitely there should be, and there will be, I'm expecting investigations into all of this, because there have been huge allegations. It doesn't look good when you claim that somebody deceived the whole system, to get an office, get funding, get budgets, and all of that. So it's a very, very big one.
And then you're rejecting it.
So unless it's the Senate just saying, okay, we're putting our hands off this one, let the right authorities handle this case and handle this issue without interference, that's, I think, the right way to go from the Nigerian Senate as well. Well, this morning you can pick up a copy of any of the dailies. You have an insight into all of the trending stories, as most of the stories resurfacing on the front pages. With states sharing 2.55 trillion naira June 2026 revenue. So that's a very huge figure there. And hopefully these funds will be used to serve the Nigerian populace. Where in the rainy season, a lot of flooding has been happening as well. Hopefully, when the governors receive these funds, they can look at how to improve the drainage systems in their various states. Somewhere like Lagos, places that
especially Lagos, Calabar,
have been said not to have ever flooded in the past 20-30 years are beginning to flood. So there are a lot of concerns when it comes to this. So hopefully the governors sit down, look at how to better plan their cities, better plan the drainage systems in their states as well, so that we can have people not losing their properties, their cars, lives, their homes, and their lives as well. So this monies need to go into working for Nigerians as well during this period. Well, yesterday Argentina knocked out England in the semi-final, so congratulations to the Argentines. 2-1 goals from Enzo Fernandez and Lautaro Martinez. A bit of a disappointment from England, where probably doing better for me, in the first 60 minutes. But for the love of me, I don't know why they went all out defense. So only Thomas Tuchel can tell us why he took off his wingers and brought in all defenders. And by the time they were 2-1 down, nothing could be done. Tried to bring in Rashford to help change the game, but was too little, too late in that one. So it's going to be Spain against Argentina, very huge one on Sunday. May the best team win. Third place playoff will be on Saturday between France and England. I'm really pitying England though, because they're going to be facing an angry France team. Well, we'll see what that one will come up with. Well, that's it for sports and the papers this morning. My name is Chooks.
And I am Nice Force.
Yeah, keep listening to this dial. Ray Power 100.5 FM has everything for you. Don't go anywhere. Good morning.
Good morning.
Providing 360 degrees of information and entertainment. Reloaded for today's Niger.
Ray Power. Ray Power. Ray Power. Ray Power.